My name is Michelle, and for 18 years I was mom. Not the backup, not the fill-in, not the side note. I was the one who stayed up when she had night terrors, who packed lunches with those ridiculous little notes inside because I wanted her to feel seen, and who sat white-knuckled in the passenger seat teaching her how to drive. I was there through braces, breakups, and birthday parties where no one showed up except me and a store-bought cake. And yet, in a matter of months, everything unraveled the moment she found her birth family. Everything I had poured into her, years of love and sacrifice, the emotional labor, it all suddenly felt like a debt she had paid off. Once settled, she seemed to decide she had no further use for me. At first, it was little things. She stopped calling me mom. Instead, she used my name, flat and casual, as though we were co-workers. The first few times, I let it slide. I told myself it was part of her growing independence. I didn't want to smother her. I knew how important it was for young women to carve out their identity. But what I didn't expect was that she would carve me out entirely. She came home late, carrying the scent of perfume I didn't recognize. She spoke about them like they were a dream come true. My real brother said I should try this internship, she would announce. Or, my birth mom's helping me plan my dorm layout. Each time my stomach twisted, but I forced a nod, a smile stretched thin across my face. If I objected, I risked looking insecure or controlling. If I admitted how it made me feel, she would accuse me of jealousy toward the woman who had given her away. So I said nothing. I simply watched as she folded me out of her life like a corner of a page she no longer intended to read. Then came the send-off dinner. She mentioned it in passing, careful, vague, as though she already knew I would not like it. "Oh, we're doing a little dinner before I leave," she mumbled, scrolling on her phone, not even looking up. "Just something small with the family." I tried to catch her eye and said gently, "I'd love to help plan it. Should we do it here? I could cook." She cut me off before I could finish. "No, it's just my real family. They're doing it. You wouldn't want to come." I remember standing in the kitchen holding a dish towel, my fingers shaking. "What do you mean I wouldn't want to come?" I asked, my voice trembling despite my efforts to steady it. She finally looked at me then. Her eyes were flat, tired, as though she had already outgrown me. "It's just for blood family. You understand?" "No," I whispered. "I don't understand. Not one bit." That night I stayed up until 2 in the morning scrolling through old photographs. Her first Halloween in that little pumpkin costume, her high school graduation, the sparkle on her face when I surprised her with concert tickets she had begged for. I remembered the time she had strep throat and I slept on the floor beside her bed for 3 nights in case she needed water or a cold cloth. I remembered her first heartbreak when we ate ice cream from the tub and watched sappy movies until she stopped crying. Wasn't that real? Wasn't that family? Apparently, DNA outweighed everything else. I had raised her, poured every ounce of myself into her. And yet, the moment someone with matching blood appeared, I was benched. No warning, no conversation, just discarded. I didn't go to the dinner. I wasn't invited. I didn't text, didn't call. I let the night pass in silence. I imagined her at a fancy restaurant, dressed up, laughing with strangers who shared her cheekbones and her last name. They had missed 18 years of her life but still received the honor of seeing her off. I wondered if she even mentioned me. I wondered if anyone there knew who had paid for the very college they were celebrating. Spoiler, it was me. I had saved every year, sacrificed vacations, new clothes, dinners out with friends, all so she could leave this house with less debt and more options. And now, that seat at the table had been given to people who had ghosted her existence until it was convenient. I lay awake the entire night staring at the ceiling, the hum of the fan too loud, too soft, too everything. Is this what motherhood comes down to? I thought. 18 years of invisible work, only to be forgotten when the credits roll. I wasn't asking for a medal, but I thought I'd at least get a goodbye. Instead, all I had was the slammed echo of the words blood family, still ringing like a curse in my ears. It felt like I was grieving a death. No one had died, except maybe the version of her who used to call me mom and mean it. When the sun came up, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table staring at the empty chair where she used to sit for breakfast. She hadn't eaten with me in weeks, but I always set her place anyway, like a ritual I couldn't let go of. That morning I didn't. That morning, I logged into our shared bank account and quietly removed her card access. Not out of revenge, out of self-respect. If I wasn't good enough for her life, my money shouldn't be either. She had made her choice. Now I was making mine. The first text came at 9:03 a.m., a fraud alert from my bank, asking if I had authorized a $312 charge at the Garden House Bistro. At first I thought it was spam. But something about the name felt familiar. I opened the notification and stared at the timestamp, 8:57 p.m., the exact time her send-off dinner would have been wrapping up. My stomach tightened. The Garden House. A trendy, overpriced restaurant uptown, the kind of place you booked for special occasions. I had once considered making a reservation there for her 17th birthday, but the menu prices made me choose a homemade dinner and cake instead. Apparently, she had no such hesitation now, not when she thought she could use my money. I confirmed with the bank that the charge had been declined. The woman on the phone said politely, "Yes, ma'am. It was your authorized user's card ending in 2245. Her card. The one meant for books, gas, emergencies. Essentials. Not shrimp cocktail and craft cocktails. I asked if any other attempts had been made. 3 in fact. All declined, all within 4 minutes. I pictured her at that table of smiling strangers, trying to play the part of the responsible daughter with her shiny card, only to have her fantasy collapse in front of everyone. There was a small, bitter part of me that felt a flicker of satisfaction. Not because I wanted to humiliate her, but because she needed to understand, you can't block someone from your life and still treat them like an ATM. That night I heard nothing. No text, no call, no knock on the door. Just silence. I imagined her birth mother stepping in to pay the bill, the awkwardness, the subtle shift in their smiles. Maybe they looked at her differently then, realizing she wasn't quite as independent as she wanted them to believe. I knew it wasn't fair to think that way, but I couldn't help it. I had been made to feel disposable, and now she had to face the cost of that decision, both literally and emotionally. The next morning she showed up at my door. I wasn't even dressed yet, still in my robe clutching a lukewarm cup of coffee when I heard the knock. It was loud, urgent, angry. I opened the door and there she was. Makeup from the night before still clung to her face, mascara smeared into bruised shadows beneath her eyes, her lips pressed tight with frustration. She looked exhausted, not just physically but emotionally worn. "What the hell, Mom?" she snapped, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. It was the first time she had called me Mom in weeks. But the way she said it, it didn't feel like love. It felt like accusation. I closed the door and followed her into the living room, my heart pounding with the weight of what was coming. She turned on me like I was a stranger. "Why did you block my card?" she demanded, arms crossed like I was the reckless teenager who had overstepped. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I sat down slowly, placed my coffee on the table, and met her glare head-on. My hands were steady, though my insides felt like glass about to crack. "You blocked me from your life," I said quietly. I figured it was only fair. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. She looked genuinely shocked, as if she hadn't expected me to ever say the words aloud. "You embarrassed me," she said finally. Her voice shook now, brittle at the edges. "In front of everyone. My birth mom had to pay for the whole thing. Do you know how that looked?" "Yes," I said calmly, though my chest ached. "It looked like you expected someone you cut out of your life to keep footing the bill for your new one." She recoiled as if my words had physically struck her. "That's not fair," she whispered, her voice small, defensive. "I never said I didn't love you." I laughed then, a sharp, bitter sound I hardly recognized as my own. "You didn't have to say it. You showed it. You showed it when you didn't invite me. When you called her mom in front of your friends. When you erased me so easily the second you found someone who shared your DNA. My hands were trembling, but I didn't stop. And now you want my money. You want me to be the invisible support system who pays for the spotlight you gave to someone else." She sat down across from me, her posture deflating, arms limp at her sides. Her voice dropped to a murmur. "I didn't think you'd cut me off yet." She barely met my eyes. That word, "yet," landed like a hammer. "So you knew I would eventually," I said, the pain crawling up my throat like bile. "You just hoped you could squeeze one last favor out of me before I got smart." She didn't deny it. That silence told me everything. "You want independence, sweetheart?" I added, pushing myself up from the chair. "That includes financial independence. You can't block me as your mother but keep me on as your sponsor. That's not how this works." She broke then, sobbing, real, broken sobs that twisted my insides and made every instinct in me want to rush forward, to wrap her up like I used to when she was small. But I didn't move. I stayed where I was, letting her cry. Because sometimes love isn't about stepping in. Sometimes love is letting someone feel the sting of their choices. She wiped her face on her sleeve, eyes red and raw. When she finally looked at me, I barely recognized her. "I didn't think it would end like this," she whispered. "Neither did I," I said softly. "But it has. And there's no turning back now." The next morning she came again. Same time, same tears. But this time she didn't even knock. She just sat on the porch like she belonged there, like she hadn't burned the bridge herself with a match and gasoline. I stood behind the curtain for a full 5 minutes, watching her. She was hunched forward, arms wrapped around her knees, her backpack slumped at her feet. Her makeup was smudged again, but this time it wasn't from a night out. It was from a night in. The kind of night you spend pacing, replaying mistakes, realizing what you've done but too proud to figure out how to undo it. For a moment, through the glass, I almost mistook her for the little girl who used to wait outside ballet class, clutching a teddy bear with both hands, scanning for my car. But that little girl had called me mom with her whole heart. This one sat here because her safety net had snapped, and she didn't know where else to land. I opened the door and leaned against the frame. "You're early," I said flatly. Her head jerked up, startled, like she hadn't expected me to appear at all. I didn't know where else to go," she stammered, wiping at her eyes with her sleeve. Her voice cracked with a vulnerability that once would have broken me. The kind that used to send me driving through snowstorms just to bring her soup. But now it sounded hollow. Now it felt like someone else wearing my daughter's skin. I didn't move from the doorway. "Why didn't you go to your real mom's place?" I asked. My words came out colder than I had intended. Her face twisted as though I had slapped her. And maybe I had. She deserved to know what it felt like to be told you were second string, to be dismissed as replaceable. She stood shakily, her knees cracking as she straightened. "I messed up," she said quietly. "I know that. But you don't have to be cruel." The word cruel hit me harder than I expected. I blinked at her. Cruel? I had swallowed heartbreak whole for months. I had smiled through her indifference, pretended I wasn't wounded when she blew past me in the hallway or texted her birth mom at the dinner table. I had tiptoed around her new loyalties like fragile glass I couldn't touch. And now she thought I was cruel, because I didn't want to bankroll her fantasy anymore? "I'm not being cruel," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I'm being clear. There's a difference." I nudged the screen door open slightly and pointed at her backpack. "If you're here for money or for a place to crash, you'll have to ask the people you chose. Not me." She blinked rapidly, her jaw trembling like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. "They're not what I thought," she whispered finally. It's not how I imagined." Her voice faltered, then steadied with confession. "She wanted me to pay for my share of the dinner. Said it was important for me to learn responsibility. But she didn't tell me that beforehand. She waited until the check came and just slid it to me." Her hands were shaking now. She said, "You're grown now. Start acting like it." I stayed quiet, letting her words hang heavy in the air. It sounded like tough love. But tough love feels different when it comes from someone who never bothered to raise you. For a brief moment, the urge to fold nearly overtook me. To pull her inside, make her a warm breakfast, to fix everything the way I always had. But then I remembered the look on her face when she told me I wasn't invited to her send-off dinner. I remembered her laughing into her phone, calling her birth mom the real MVP. And I stayed in the doorway. I remembered walking past her bedroom that night, hearing the muffled sound of her voice through the door. She had been on the phone, laughing, carefree. And then I heard it, words so sharp they carved themselves into my chest. "Yeah, she was just the woman who raised me, but you're my actual mom." That sentence echoed in my head for days. Just the woman who raised me. My entire motherhood, 18 years of scraped knees, late-night fevers, packed lunches, and whispered encouragements, reduced to a placeholder, a stand-in until someone with shared DNA finally showed up. And now, when reality hadn't matched her fairy tale, she wanted to circle back, pick up where we left off, like love had a pause button that could be pressed and released at her convenience. I stepped fully onto the porch, the air heavy around us. "You made your choice," I said, steady but firm. "And I respected it. But choices come with consequences. You don't get to disappear me when it suits you and then resurrect me when things fall apart." Her chin trembled as she looked away. "I didn't think you'd actually let me go," she whispered, almost ashamed of the admission. That pierced me more than I wanted to show. Of course she hadn't thought it. I had always been the glue, the safety net, the steady presence making sure nothing crumbled. But I wasn't that anymore. I couldn't be. A neighbor's lawnmower droned across the street, and I caught sight of him glancing over, curious at the tension spilling onto my porch. I didn't care. Let them see. Let the world see what it looks like when a mother finally draws a line no one thought she'd ever draw. "I love you," I said, my voice cracking despite my effort to hold it steady. "But love isn't permission to use people. I've been your mom in every way that matters. And you've treated me like a backup plan. I can't keep being the person you fall back on when your fantasy doesn't work out." Her eyes widened, stunned, like it had never occurred to her that love could have limits, that even I could break. "So that's it?" she asked, her voice hollow. "You're just done?" I nodded, slow, deliberate. "Yes, for now. Until you figure out what family really means. Until you learn to love without using." I turned, stepped back inside, and closed the door behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't lock it. But I didn't open it again either, not even when I heard her soft sobs breaking in the night air, not even when I heard her gather her things and walk down the steps, her footsteps fading into the distance. I sat on the couch afterward, staring at the empty spot she had stood on the porch, and something shifted inside me. Not peace. Not relief. But resolve. I hadn't closed the door out of spite. I closed it to survive. I had given her everything. And now I was giving her space, to decide if any of it had ever meant anything to her at all. 3 days passed in silence. Not the kind that rattles the windows, but the kind that hums beneath the floorboards, taut and waiting to snap. She didn't call. She didn't knock. She didn't even send the coward's comfort of a text. Just absence. And I'll admit, I still checked. Every morning, my eyes lingered at the window longer than necessary. Every night, I left the porch light on longer than I should have. Hope is a stubborn thing. It's not soft, not gentle. It digs, sharp and inconvenient, into your chest every time you try to let go. So when the phone rang that morning, I already knew. The number was unfamiliar, but my gut twisted the way it always did when she was involved. Half dread, half desperate, I answered. "Hello," I said, voice low, cautious. Pause. Then a voice that sounded like hers, only older, clipped with practiced patience. "Hi, this is Valerie. I'm, her birth mother." She didn't even say my daughter's name. Just her. As if I hadn't memorized every syllable of that name since the day I held her in my arms. I stayed quiet. Valerie continued, gum cracking casually in the background. "I just wanted to clarify some things. She's really upset. I think maybe there's been a misunderstanding. The card thing, it really embarrassed her." Her tone was breezy, unbothered, the voice of someone who'd never spent a night in a hospital chair, who'd never been called in the middle of the night to soothe night terrors, who'd never held the pieces of a broken teenage heart together. Something inside me snapped. Patience, restraint, gone. "Let me make one thing very clear," I said, each word deliberate. "You don't get to call me and guilt-trip me for not paying for a dinner I wasn't even invited to. You don't get to act like I blindsided her when she's the one who erased me from her life like I never existed. I raised her, alone, for 18 years. Where were you when she had pneumonia at 6 and I slept in a hospital chair for 3 nights? Where were you when she sobbed into my shirt after her first breakup? You were nowhere. But now you're back and you want to play house and I'm supposed to keep paying for it." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was the kind that said I had finally said something no one else dared to. Valerie cleared her throat. "Look, I didn't mean to cause problems. I just thought maybe you'd want to help her. She's still your daughter." That's when the laugh tore out of me, sharp, bitter, hollow. She was my daughter. Until she told people I was just the woman who raised her. My voice cracked on that last part and I hated that it did. "She didn't say that," Valerie cut in quickly. But the pause that followed betrayed her. She had heard it. Maybe she had even encouraged it. "She did," I said quietly. "And I heard it with my own ears." I hung up. Afterward, I sat on the living room floor, knees drawn tight to my chest. I didn't cry. Couldn't. The well was dry. I was exhausted from grieving someone who was still alive, still breathing, still carrying my heart in her back pocket like it was worthless. That night, I opened my closet and pulled out the baby blanket I'd kept all these years. Soft, faded, still faintly scented with lavender detergent. My fingers traced the hand-stitched initials. The ones I gave her, not the ones she wore now like a badge of new identity. For a moment I thought about burning it, ending this chapter once and for all. But I couldn't. Not out of love. Out of memory. Because no matter what she said, I had been the one who held her through night terrors, who kissed her scraped knees, who clapped through every recital, even when she never once looked into the crowd to find me. That mattered, even if only to me. The next day came another knock. I opened the door, braced for tears, but this time she didn't look broken. She looked furious. Arms crossed, jaw tight. "Why did you tell her I called you just the woman who raised me?" she snapped. "I told you that in confidence. I didn't mean it like that." I blinked, stunned by her audacity. "You said it. You meant it. And you've been acting like it. Don't stand here and pretend I twisted your words." Her face flushed, her indignation rising. "You're making this worse. I came here to talk, not to fight." "Then maybe you should have come here with something other than excuses," I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended but truer than I had ever spoken to her before. She looked away, blinking fast as if searching for a script she hadn't prepared. It was just a bad moment, she muttered. I was trying to explain our relationship to people who don't get it. Then explain this, I said, stepping closer, refusing to give her the out she was looking for. If I'm just the woman who raised you, why are you still trying to use my bank card? Why are you coming to my house when things fall apart? You don't get to throw away a parent and then come back when the world isn't as kind as you thought it'd be. Her lip trembled. I don't want your money. What? I cut in, heat rising in my chest. You just want my guilt? My silence? My support when it's convenient? You can't cherry-pick pieces of me. I'm not a buffet. I'm your mother. Or at least I was. She stood there for a long moment, staring at me like I was some puzzle she couldn't solve. And maybe I was, because for the first time in her life I wasn't bending. I wasn't smoothing the path or cushioning the blow. I was done being the fallback. And she was finally seeing that. It was only a matter of time before the phone rang again. I didn't need to check the screen to know. Valerie. The woman who had given birth to my daughter, then vanished for nearly 2 decades, only to return with open arms and empty hands, just in time to claim the title of real mom. I let it ring twice before I answered. I wanted her to sweat. Wanted her to feel the weight of calling someone who wasn't interested in playing polite anymore. Hello, I said, my voice low, stripped of emotion. She sounded chipper, like we were catching up over coffee. Hey, it's Valerie again. Look, I wanted to touch base about what happened the other day. I think things got a little heated between you and her. And honestly, I just want what's best for everyone. I didn't answer. I let the silence stretch, forcing her to fill it with her smooth justifications. I talked to her last night, she continued, gum clicking in the background, and she's really upset. She says you're being harsh and that she didn't mean to hurt you. Maybe you could just, forgive and move forward. A laugh escaped me, quiet, sharp, humorless. Forgive and move forward, I repeated. Is that what she wants? Or is that what you want? Because you don't want to deal with the mess you helped create. Now hold on, she tried, but I didn't give her the space. You want to play mother now? Fine. That's your right. But don't you dare come to me asking for grace after watching her treat me like trash. Don't ask me to smooth this over so you can keep being the hero without ever doing the heavy lifting. She exhaled, the false brightness faltering. Look, I know I wasn't there and I'm sorry for that. But I'm here now. Isn't that what matters? The question landed like a slap. I stood, pacing, phone pressed hard to my ear. No. What matters is consistency. What matters is showing up when it's hard, when it's thankless, when no one's clapping for you. I didn't get to disappear when she slammed doors and cursed me out. I stayed. Through all of it. And now you swoop in with your shared cheekbones and Instagram photos. And she calls you her mother while I get reduced to just the woman who raised her. And you think I'm the one who needs to forgive and move forward. Valerie's voice softened, almost pleading. She's just trying to figure out who she is. She's 18. Kids make mistakes. I stopped pacing. My hand clenched around the phone until my knuckles ached. No. Kids steal candy and lie about homework. I swallowed, the bitter taste rising in my throat. This was betrayal. This was choice. Don't insult me by calling it a mistake. She didn't reply right away. And in the silence, I knew she was finally realizing I wasn't the kind of woman who folded under pressure. She said you cut her off, Valerie mumbled. That you shut the door on her. I breathed deep, steady. I didn't shut the door. She walked out and locked it behind her. I just didn't open it again when she knocked, with guilt in one hand and entitlement in the other. When the call ended, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My face looked tired, older than it had even a week ago. Grief does that. It doesn't just live in your chest. It seeps into your skin, your eyes, your spine. I had spent nearly 2 decades raising a child who no longer wanted to claim me. And now I was supposed to, what? Apologize for not being a doormat? I thought of the women I knew, the ones erased after adoption reunions. Mothers who had sown love into every fiber of their children's lives, only to be discarded like they were never more than a temporary foster home. And the world always demanded the same thing of them. Be bigger. Be forgiving. Be quiet. But I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. That evening, I logged into our joint college fund account. The one I had opened for her the day she started kindergarten. Every birthday check, every overtime bonus, every skipped vacation had gone into that account, building a future I thought we would both be proud of. The balance blinked back at me from the screen. And I felt nothing. No pride. No grief. Just a strange calm as I clicked close account. I transferred what was mine back to my account and placed the rest into a separate trust. One she would only access if she came back with an apology, not a demand. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. If she wanted to build her life without me, she could do it without my money too. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You really shut the account? Well, you're punishing me for finding my family. You're unbelievable. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. I'm not punishing you for finding your family. I'm just finally believing you when you said I wasn't part of it. No reply came. I didn't expect one. Instead, I made myself a simple dinner, salmon and roasted vegetables, and ate it on the back porch. The sky above was bruised with clouds, a storm brewing at the edges, but the air around me was still. For the first time in weeks, the house didn't feel haunted by her absence. It felt like mine again. I sipped my wine and let the silence hold me. Not as punishment but as promise. A reminder that sometimes peace comes only after the loudest kind of heartbreak. And sitting there, I didn't feel like the villain she wanted to paint me as. I felt like a mother who had finally chosen herself. A week passed. 7 long, echoing days without a call, without a text, without even a bitter ping of accusation in my inbox. At first, the quiet had felt like punishment, like she was dangling her absence to make me ache. But slowly, steadily it shifted. The silence became something else, a boundary, a border I had drawn. Not with rage, not with spite, but with the kind of clarity that only comes after you've cried enough to empty a river and stood in the wreckage long enough to realize you don't want to rebuild what was there. I filled those days with long walks around the neighborhood, breathing in the crisp air until my chest hurt. I started clearing out her old room, not in anger, not as an act of revenge, but as restoration. Every shelf told a story. I boxed the childhood stuffed animals with their worn fur, the trophies that still had her fingerprints in dust, the journals I wasn't brave enough to read. Each item went into a labeled container, sealed and stacked neatly in the garage. Not thrown away but not welcome in the house either. Just like her. It was during one of those silent afternoons, sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, that I opened the junk drawer. Charger cords, ketchup packets, rubber bands that had lost their stretch. And tucked in the corner an envelope. Innocent but unmistakable. Her handwriting scrawled across the front. My breath caught. I held it for a long moment before tearing it open, every muscle in my body tight, bracing like I was about to take a hit. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, torn from the spiral. Her handwriting was messy, rushed, uneven. At the very top she had written, "I didn't mean to make you feel like you didn't matter." That was all it took. Tears came hot, sudden, unwanted. I blinked fast but the page blurred anyway. I forced myself to keep reading, afraid if I stopped I'd never pick it up again. She wrote about being confused, about wanting to belong somewhere that looked like her. About the pull between loyalty and curiosity. About how she thought I would always be there no matter how far she pushed. Her words stung. I thought you'd always be there. Always. I whispered into the empty kitchen. Even if you kept pushing me away? Even if you erased me? But the line that broke me sat at the very bottom of the page. If you hate me now, I understand. But I hope one day you'll remember that I was your little girl first. My knees weakened and I sank into a chair, the letter trembling in my hands. Something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness. Not softness. Something harder to name. Complexity. I saw her not as the sharp, cruel young woman who had sliced me with her words, but as a child again. The scared one. The uncertain one. The one who still wanted to be loved even as she pushed me away with both hands. Still, that didn't mean I could open the door again. That didn't mean I could unknow the sting of being called just the woman who raised her. That didn't undo the hollow in my chest from being discarded, replaceable, invisible. That evening I carried the letter outside and sat on the porch, watching the sky bruise into dusky blue. The silence pressed in gentle this time. I thought about what it really meant to love someone who no longer made space for you. People like to say unconditional love means taking someone back no matter what. I don't believe that anymore. Real love, adult love, has conditions. Respect. Reciprocity. Balance. I spoke into the dusk as if she were sitting across from me. You don't get to claim the benefits of my love while spitting on the foundation it was built on. You don't get to exile me and still expect me to play mother when it's convenient. That's not love. That's use. The next morning, I taped up the boxes I had packed and wrote her campus address in the corner. I didn't include a note. No sentiment. No mixed signals. She needed to understand this was final, not an act of punishment but of truth. I had moved forward. That night my phone buzzed. A voicemail. Her voice came through, softer than I'd heard in months. "I got the box. I understand. I wish things were different, but I get it now. I just wanted to say thank you for everything, even if I didn't say it when it counted. And then silence. No plea to call back. No begging. Just a quiet message that hung in the air like a lullaby with no chorus. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. People love to believe every rift can be repaired. That forgiveness is inevitable, that reconciliation is guaranteed. But sometimes relationships die without a burial. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop performing the role someone demands of you and walk away with your dignity intact. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her harm. But I couldn't go back to being the woman who kept giving while being asked to shrink smaller and smaller until I barely existed. Maybe one day we'll find a way back. Not to what we were, no, that's gone, but to something new, something honest. Or maybe this is the end of our story together. Either way, I'm not waiting at the door anymore. I'm living my life. I'm reclaiming my peace. I'm letting go of the fantasy that love always wins, and embracing the truth that sometimes boundaries have to. Because loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. And I loved her. I still do. But I love me more now. Love this story? Like, share, and subscribe for more epic audio adventures. Stay curious and keep listening.